Before I start on number 24, I want to point out that this these two words in italics here, next to the name of the organism, the acacia ant, those two words, we don't need to know how to pronounce them, we don't need to know what they mean. Those are the scientific name for the acacia ant. So when you're reading a question, if you see two words next to an organism's name, that the first one is capitalized, and they both look like they're maybe in another language. They actually are. They're from Latin, and they are the scientific name of the organism. In this question, we actually don't need to know anything about that, and I'll tell you, unless you see scientific names later on in the question somewhere, in another part of the question or in the answer choices, you won't need to know typically anything about the scientific name. So we're actually going to ignore it for this question. We don't need to know it. So number 24, without the scientific name, states the acacia ant lives in the bull's horn acacia plant as shown below. The acacia ant nests and feeds in the plant's hollow thorns. The ant helps protect the bull's horn acacia by attacking insects and grazing animals that come near the plant. The relationship between the acacia ant and the bull's horn acacia is an example of which of the following? And our answer choices are going to have the different types of relationships that it might be. Now, in this question, it says it wants to know what type of relationship we have here. And the types of relationships between two living organisms are called symbiotic relationships. And a symbiotic relationship is a relationship between two different types of organisms. So not between, like, say, two humans or two dogs or two cats, but between two totally different species of organism. In this case, it's the ant and the acacia plant. So we need to figure out which type of relationship this is. There are three types of symbiotic relationships, and they are listed below in the answer choices. There's commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Now, there are only three types of symbiotic relationships, but on the EOC test, there are going to be four answer choices. So letter H, we know, is not correct automatically, just because neutralism is not one of the three types of symbiotic relationship, but they do have to put something there as a fourth answer choice. So we're just going to get rid of it. Now, let's go over what those three types of relationships offer the two individual organisms so that we can tell which type is which. Now, any relationship that two organisms are in, one of them is going to benefit from the relationship. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a relationship between the two organisms. I like to represent this with a smiley face. All right, we have a little happy organism here. All right, so one of the two organisms will benefit from each type of relationship, or there wouldn't be a relationship to speak of. Now let's go on to what the second organism gets from the relationship, because that's what defines the type of symbiotic relationship. So I'm going to start with letter G. You may have heard of the phrase, the feeling is mutual. All right, if the feeling is mutual, that means we both feel the same way. So in a mutualistic relationship, we're going to have two organisms that are both getting something beneficial from the relationship. So we have two happy organisms. In letter J, parasitism, if you've ever heard of a parasite's a bad thing. That's not something that you want. A parasite harms or takes something away from another organism. All right, so I'm going to put a little frowny face here because we're going to have a sad organism. It does not want to have a parasite. The parasite's getting something it wants, so it's happy, but the organism that has the parasite in it or on it is not going to be happy about the relationship. It's going to be harmed. And F, commensalism. In this type of relationship, the other organism isn't helped, it isn't hurt, it just doesn't care. It's not being affected really in any way significantly, and so it's not going to be bothered by the relationship, but it's not helped either. So we're going to look at our two organisms and determine which type of relationship we have. So remember, we have the ant is our first organism, and the acacia is the other organism. So notice it gives us descriptions about what each organism gets. And it tells us the acacia ant nests and feeds in the plant's hollow thorns. So it gets a place to live and it gets food to eat. So it gets a nest and food from the plant. So the ant is getting a benefit. So we're going to say the ant is a happy camper here, right? We have a happy ant because it has a place to live and food to eat. The acacia, first when you look at it, you might think, well, the ant is feeding off of this organism, and so maybe it's being harmed because it's being eaten. However, it also says that the ant helps protect the acacia plant by attacking insects and grazing animals that come near the plant. A grazing animal would actually eat the whole plant. So the ant is protecting the acacia plant. So the acacia plant is getting a benefit from this relationship, and so it is also going to be happy about it, right? It's getting a benefit. So our correct answer choice, because both organisms are getting a benefit from the relationship, is mutualism. If one of them had been harmed by the relationship, it would be parasitism, and if one of them had been unaffected, not helped or harmed by the relationship, it would be commensalism.